Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Come on in. If you haven't found a seat, there's still available spaces. And thanks especially to come out on such a rainy day. It's been such a lovely Indian summer. We really today want to welcome you to launch and kick off our AI Distinguished Speaker Series called Shaping Technology to Serve Humanity. It's sponsored by the College of Humanities and Social Sciences in collaboration with the College of Education and Engaged Learning. And we're really excited about the kickoff because we're launching it with Dr. Sri Yash Tadimalla's talk on the imperative of for AI literacy. And this year-long series brings together expert insights to our campus to really spark critical conversations about the future of technology, society, and education overall. And we're the co-hosts of this series. My name is Arno Kurtz, for those who don't know me, and that's my colleague, Kate McCaffrey. I'm also the co-founder of Research and Interdisciplinary Global Studies, and one of our pillars in this faculty-led research network here on campus is also on technology, innovation, and sort of the effects on society. So this series really also speaks to many of our members. We're over 80 faculty associated. If you don't know what it is, check out Riggs Montclair and contact us. I'm also the director of Project Hours Lab, which is a research initiative that brings experiential learning to students from also an interdisciplinary perspective, and check that out as well, where the technology angle is really key, that our students, when we send them out to get jobs and contribute to our society, cannot circumvent technology and AI. I'll hand it over to Kate for a couple of words on what she's doing.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Kate McCaffrey. I'm a professor in the anthropology department. I'm also the co-director of the SEEDS program, which is our newly launched core curriculum. We're very pleased to invite you to join us in this very important discussion about the role of humanities and social sciences in shaping the questions that we ask about this important, powerful new technology. I would like to welcome the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Science, Dean Fatima Milli, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you so much, Kate and Arno. Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to have to welcome all of you this morning for this important lecture series. And when we were thinking about introducing it, as Arno and Kate has mentioned, the impetus is really the fact that technology is changing our society in some fundamental ways, and we need humanities and social sciences to help us be the sense maker and the regulator in the process. And we figured we really need to think together about these issues, and as a college, as a university, our voice is important, and the expertise of our faculty, the expertise of our colleagues is extremely important. And once we decided to create this series, we started thinking who to bring, and the first person that came to mind is Dr. Tadimalla. Full disclosure, I knew him when he was a PhD student. I was in his committee, and he was amazing from the first day I met him. There is a lot that I can say about Dr. Tadimalla, but I'll say a couple of things that make him really fit for this. He completed his PhD recently, and his PhD is in computer science with a focus on sociology. When speaking with Dr. Tadimalla, very often my advice to him, our advice to him was, Yash, focus. he's not one to focus. He is able to address every single aspect. He's so passionate about equity in education, equity in STEM education, sustainability, mental health. And for him, all of that is important, and he's not letting go of anything. And one of the ways in which he manifested that, he joined a UN youth group that is focusing on that. So he doesn't do what the rest of us do, that is think about something and then talk about it. He acts about it. He also became president of the Student Platform for Education and Development at the UN. So, and as a result, these last 2 weeks where we're all watching things happening at the UN, of course, Yash was in the middle of it. He was also solicited by the primary professional organization, the Computer Research Association, as a fellow to represent the youth group in terms of AI. He is a faculty member at UNC Charlotte and has been the role that he has played, the things that he has initiated in terms of literacy of AI for everybody, in terms of creating AI degrees that are outside of computer science, is short of amazing, and that's primarily, or that's a large part of what he will talk about today. So I'm extremely happy and honored to have Yash be our speaker today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for those kind words. And I have to, full disclosure, I can only do it because I have amazing mentors and amazing teams and a lot of people rooting for my success, as you all do here with your faculty and students and networks. Before I get started, this is a video I saw 2 days ago, so fresh off the press. I thought it could be a good starter for our conversation today. So if we can turn the lights down a little. I am not being paid by OpenAI.
Good? Yeah.
Really good.
So when you watch that video, how many of you have found yourself thinking, I used an AI tool for something similar? Raise your hand. That's a significant number of people. How many of you have asked an AI tool for relationship advice? Some of you. How many of you have asked AI for professional advice? Again, that's a significantly larger group. So by the end of the talk today, the goal for me is to empower you to be able to make decisions of when to use AI, when not to use AI. And if you want to be able to have meaningful discussions about the topic, what is the kind of homework you need to do? I'm going to be a teacher hat, and I'm going to give you a lot of homeworks on what you can do after this talk. And I think Dean Milley was really strategic in positioning me first, because all of the speakers will contribute to the homework you do and build on that foundations, which is how literacy works. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. But I do often wear 4 different hats. The hat of a young person navigating the world, trying to get things done despite all the barriers and challenges and the political climate we exist in, and the realities of our lives with technology, without technology, things happening in the world. The hat of a researcher who tries to approach these problems with a more, I want to study them. Like, what are the factors? How can we deconstruct this problem? I also wear the hat of a teacher or an educator thinking about, okay, whatever I'm learning, how do I translate that? How do I share that with someone else? And I also wear the hat of an activist who is both on the street fighting for things, but also in the room educating the people about the cause and the issue and why it's important to think about it and think outside the box when we're approaching problem solving. And that approach for me, while has led to less sleep over the last 5 years, has also allowed me to do some really cool things. I have been able to travel to, I think, 60 countries talking to young people about what they think is technology doing in their communities. Is it improving their lifestyle, or is it creating barriers for their success? How are their human rights being empowered or violated by technology? How do they envision the future of their planet that they want to live on? And what is the role of technology in that vision? And a lot of times I share those insights from these different communities, bring them back to global governance discussions. That was me 2 weeks ago talking at the high-level AI meeting, which kickstarts a series of AI governance dialogues that are being led by member states or countries about what is the role of AI at the national sovereign level, about interoperability between data and other things. And my point was, we have to think about this technology as not just a technology to make money, but as a technology that is influencing people's lives, and lives are not quantified in economic terms. So, and how do you process that was a part of my dissertation research. And when I think about these problems, oftentimes I think about what is the technological angle, what is the human angle, what is the educational angle, and all of those hats kind of intersect, which means I am thinking a lot, which is good. Thinking is good, and we should not offload that to AI. So my research has focused on 3 different components. One is understanding how humans and AI technologies interact with one another, how their identities interact, understanding how those identities intersect to create access to power or barriers to power, understanding how in higher education institutions, these big concepts about AI governance, how do they play out in our universities? Who is making the decision? Is it the chancellor making the decision and 7 people trying to scramble to get those things worked out? Or is it the IT staff in one specific department trying to make sure the servers are ready for whatever AI model they want to launch for the students to use? Or is it the compliance and legal team that's saying, we cannot have our students upload all of our data into ChatGPT? So all of these stakeholders, how do you navigate that? How do you navigate this complexity? And within all of this, something that appears is AI literacy. It's really important to be educated to have the conversation. If we have 10 people in the room and each have a different idea of what bread is or what pasta is, we will never cook. We will end up thinking about the recipes for 4 hours. And we want to eat the meal, and no one's waiting for us. It's happening really quick. And also, I think about when teaching about these things, how can we teach it in a way that helps empower a student to go and act on them? Active learning, collaboration, teams, because once they go into the industry, they need to leverage these skills to advocate for themselves and advocate for the values that they take into the industry. And obviously, human positionality through the intersectional lens is a theme that appears again and again in my work, both personally and professionally. So why do we need to talk about this now? Obviously, we all know why, but I'm going to talk about this from the sense of scale and the impact of this technology. So can the people in the back see the screen? Okay. Who can throw a number for the documented human population on this planet? Throw me numbers. Okay, 8.2. Okay, everyone agrees with you. 8.1, 8.1. It could be higher, and I said documented from reports. Everything is an approximate generalization. And out of these 8.1 billion people on our planet, approximately 3.4 billion people are documented workforce in forms of their countries or nationalities, tax processes or economic models of documenting wealth generation or capital movement. Approximately 2 billion people engage in the economy in an informal way. And a much smaller number work in the workforce, work in technology or computing information technologies and communication technologies. Can anyone guess the number of people in the world who are working in these tech or tech-adjacent fields? Give me a number. It's a 2-digit number. I'm going to make it easy. 2 million? Yeah. 23 million. Okay. A number from the back. 10,000? 17,000. 55.3 million people. It's a bigger number than that. But out of this 55.3 million people, approximately 4.5 million people are directly involved in some form of shaping AI technologies. And I want to pause here. Think about this 4.5 million people. They have the ability to influence billions of people through their choices and decisions. And in this context, also think about ChatGPT today has approximately 300 million weekly active users. The number of AI tool users estimated by 2025 is approximately 1.2 billion people. And again, thinking about digital divide, those who are not even connected to the internet, once they get connected to the internet, there's no wait time between them getting access to a device and their device having access to AI. Approximately 4 billion devices, as of today, whether they have an AI technology installed in them or not, are ready for AI tools to be involved. And again, think about all these tools, all these technologies, and within that 4.5 million people, that 4.5 million people is not representative of the planet we live on. And specifically the American context, there's a lot of reports that talk about how women are underrepresented, how people from certain demographic populations are underrepresented, and also thinking about this underrepresentation, but also thinking about who is this technology serving. We have a situation where we have tech companies that have economic capabilities that are equal to country GDPs, but they're not inhibited by the regulations of the world. They're not bound by the conventions of the world. There's no rules to how they engage at that scale because they were not codified into the laws that history has led us to have for countries, and land-bound countries, I want to say specifically. And in the United States specifically, this translates into a polarized opinion between people who know how the technology works and people who are involved in the technology and the public. And this polarization obviously changes across different sectors, but also when people are asked, do you think you feel you are represented in the technology decision-making process, who do you think felt more represented? It was men. I'm part of the two group. And specifically in the United States, it was Asian and white men who felt like their voice was represented. And part of this dynamics shows up in how we have this mixed signaling in the world. The messaging that is being generated and the people who are receiving the messaging are different sometimes. And also the outcomes that we're claiming AI is going to do for the world are also mixed. They're not all benefiting everybody, but they're also benefiting some. And some people are adopting AI at a rate that changes by day, and some people don't want to engage with the technology at all. And before we think about should I engage with AI or not, what is AI? Is AI going to save humanity or is it going to doom humanity? The first step is to become more educated about the topic, more educated about the technology and how it works, and move towards that smaller circle and expand that circle to include all of us in society. And there's a lot of readings for days. Every seminar, you're going to probably get 10, 15 readings. And I want to empower you to engage in those readings. And talking about literacy, we have gained movement. In the last year and a half, universities have started to recognize the urgency of ensuring that everyone is educated about the technology. And this urgency is also being supported by private sector and public sector. So there's some form of agreement across our society's stakeholders who move and shake things that this is an important issue. But we are not able to agree on what that looks like, because each group has a different agenda. So I'm going to share a little bit of a vocabulary building for you. So AI literacy, before talking about what it includes, at an abstract level, is an individual endeavor. You are AI literate or you are not AI literate. Think of it in the terms of civic education, your ability to navigate the world, your ability to navigate AI in the world. That is where AI literacy is built into. Then AI fluency takes it a step further, and your ability to use the technology in different contexts. I'm not able to see the age demographics, but is there anyone here who resisted the idea of Microsoft Excel sheets when they were first launched? Is there anyone here who resisted the idea of using PowerPoints for meetings every time? Okay. I now have a better idea of who is in the audience. But think of AI fluency as the ability to use AI to do tasks and the ability to do them in an efficient, reliable manner. And this is where we want everybody in the workforce to be in, because they will be using these technologies, and they need to have agency in using those technologies. And AI competency takes it a step further. So you are going from accessing Google Sheets and looking at the data to being able to do formulas in Google Sheets. Think about AI competency as the ability to apply AI to your specific area of expertise or knowledge domain, and being creative and creating new things with the help of AI, or using AI to achieve tasks that improve your productivity. And a lot of knowledge workers, a lot of the people who we're talking about will be displaced because of AI. They're actually going to be, with AI competency, they will be transitioning into new kinds of roles, and they won't be displaced. And that's an important skill. And talking about AI readiness, again, if you ask someone from the industry versus someone from academia, they have very different understanding or definitions of AI readiness. But broadly, AI readiness is an organizational term. AI readiness refers to your organization's ability to use AI to achieve things, or your organization's ability to use AI to provide a service. And in higher education, this could look like the faculty's ability to use AI to teach or to achieve their goal, or the ability of administrators to use AI to achieve their goals. And that's an institutional AI readiness. But it's really important that we can't put AI readiness before AI literacy. That is what is happening, is that organizations will say, we want to be AI ready in 6 months. What do we need to do? But they're not putting the resources to make every individual AI literate. And that causes the tension between organizational values that are set at a level that is not inclusive of the people in the organization. So what is AI literacy? So I talked about the differences, and how do we deconstruct? How can you start your journey to become more AI literate? The work I'm presenting today is not something that I just thought of overnight. It has been informed by literature from all of those fields, but also thinking about the ecosystem we exist in, so that the AI literacy that I'm presenting to you is a multi-stakeholder perspective. It's not something that's bound by the agendas of one specific group. It is also grounded in workshops and roundtables and dialogues that we've done to also be thinking about inclusivity and expanding the opportunity to everybody. We we're thinking about what does AI literacy look like that is not for just workforce, what it is for being an engaged citizen in society. And obviously teaching it myself in different formats to understand what is appropriate for which group. So there's 4 pillars of AI literacy. And often, I'm not going to go in order because I'm going to go in the order of what people think AI literacy is. The first is learning how to interact with AI, specifically generative AI in most industry terms. So there's we're going to do a professional development for a week, and all of you are going to learn how to use Gemini and ChatGPT, and you're AI literate. That is a dangerous education model. And then you have some people who are thoughtful and think about, okay, use AI, but how do we use it in an ethical, responsible manner while being critical about the technology's role in the context? But also, sometimes going a step further, we think about how do I understand how the technology itself works, understanding the data layer of the technology, understanding how these models are trained. And what that allows you to do is you're not just being critical, ethical, and responsible at the area of implementation, but the area of thinking about why do I even need to use the technology, or the inception phase. And you're not just a user, you're gaining more agency in the process. Last but not least, analyzing or the ability to understand how the technology is impacting society. And oftentimes, this is a piece that is left behind. It is one tiny module, or it's the add-on additional readings. But what we are proposing is that it's a fundamental part of being AI literate, to understand how the technology is impacting our lives and our societies. Prompt engineering is a part of it, okay? So everybody who loves the word prompt engineering is in there. But I want to make sure prompt engineering is the process of effectively creating instructions to do a task, or using AI models for desired output. It exists within how to use AI, understanding how the AI works, this phase. And we don't want a society of people who are just good at prompt engineering. So when you are thinking about studying a degree, or you're thinking about studying a minor, it has to look beyond prompt engineering. And that is where a lot of the strength of the humanities and liberal arts and strong fundamental general education lies. So think of AI literacy as enabling people to critically understand, evaluate, and use AI systems and tools in their personal life. Think of it as engaging with AI in a way that is responsible, ethical, and also safe, both for themselves and for their community, in professional and personal settings. Think of AI literacy as a way for each of us to contribute to critical dialogues and discussions on how AI is impacting broader society, but also this increasingly digital and unescapable AI-driven world. So oftentimes, again, talking about AI literacy, you have to think about how do I approach learning about it? Where are the resources? Oftentimes, these resources are not in one place. I would not have gotten my PhD if they were all already ready, right? The way we built or pulled this curriculum or knowledge learning process together is we looked at technical AI education, which is geared towards making the next generation of AI developers and leaders. And we looked at socio-technical AI education, which is focused on the more ethical, critical, responsible, and safe use of AI technologies. And we also then looked at how AI literacy is forming as a theme. And we mapped across these 4 pillars different learning objectives and goals. Obviously, this is a course, and I don't want to spend a lot of time. But for the educators in the room, we mapped these learning objectives to Bloom's taxonomy at both assessment level and learning objectives levels and learning outcomes level. And for students in the room, what that means is when you are engaging with AI literacy, your faculty are coming to you with research-driven, meaningfully thought-out curriculum that thinks about making you not just a prompt engineer, but a good citizen in society. So Pillar one, I talked about technology and what do you need to learn about. Again, being a computer scientist myself, I think you need to learn everything that's you need to know. But thinking about if I had to choose 4 things in the technology domain that you have to learn about, the first is understanding what is machine learning. How many of you have heard the word machine learning before? Raise your hand. Okay, awesome. I'm so excited that a lot of you raised your hand. So understanding how machine learning works and understanding how the data layer connects to machine learning and understanding the neural architectures of how these models are developed and understanding how AI is fundamentally different from search engines and how AI tools that you might not even have the ability to consent to integrating in your devices, how are they using your data to help you make decisions is a fundamental part of understanding the technology. And also understanding that there is a breadth and diversity of AI tools. They're not just large language models. There's diffusion models. There's signal models. There's a plethora of AI technologies. So being able to identify the different forms of AI is also a part of that technical training. And the ability to use AI includes understanding the different types of generative AI models and understanding how and when to use these models. If you want to create an image, do you start directly with asking the image generation model, or do you try to build a prompt in a text model that helps you create a better result in the image model? That's like a specific type of mental model. And for that, you need to understand the technology and be able to use it in each individual context. And obviously, prompt engineering is a big part of that, the ability to talk to the technology. And AI-assisted programming is something we put in there, because obviously I can't predict the future. But I am predicting that 30 years from now, we're going to have so much technology in our world and our lives that the equivalent of today changing the light bulb is going to be the ability to program. In the sense, you might not be a programmer professionally, but the ability to understand code could help you fix your coffee maker. We don't want to be in a situation where technology is so advanced that people's lifestyle just stop. I mean, there are so many times I wish I knew how to repair a McDonald's ice cream machine. Like, if I knew how the coding worked, I would have gone in and solved it. And also understanding when to use AI to make sure that the human in the human-AI interaction is leading the interaction. And to understand how human-human interaction is influenced by AI, and how humans will navigate AI-AI interaction as well. And this is the more interesting part, I think, and the gaps are also in the Pillar 3 and Pillar 4. When we talk about responsible use of AI and responsible use of AI, are we talking about responsibly using the AI technology to achieve a task that does not harm others, but we are okay if the technology itself was built with a history or data pipelines that might not be ethical and might harm our users? Or are we talking about responsibly using AI in a way that includes the way the technology is developed and understanding its sustainability impact, understanding that once you deploy the technology, what are the impacts? So thinking about responsibility, not just in the instance you're using it, but understanding the impact of the technology after you finish using it and someone else will build on your work. Thinking about security and privacy is going to be a big part of it. And oftentimes when we talk about security and privacy, we think about, is AI and my security and privacy being infringed or protected? But also thinking about how secure are these AI models themselves. How many of you use a medical device that is technology-based right now? Does anyone have a diabetes? Yes, we have a couple of people. So thinking about when you have these technologies that are, think of a very basic level is an Apple Watch, but also think about insulin, automated insulin releasers into your bloodstreams and how AI technologies are being used for those purposes. Thinking about how secure are those, that is an important piece of the mental model to understand for you. And obviously, ethical issues. And again, this is a minefield depending on which discipline you are in. What is ethics, whose ethics, and relativity between ethics and values and morals. Being aware of those is the first step in this context. And another big part for higher education specifically is understanding ownership, integrity, and authorship, and what it means when we're using AI to generate things. And are we offloading our ability to think to these technologies and tools, and to be able to be more self-aware of the impact of using AI tools in our everyday tasks. Last but not least, it's also really important to understand, this is where we started to understand that AI is not an isolated technology. Because when you are having these discussions, how many of you have heard of a friend said, oh, I don't want to have to do anything with AI? Raise your hand. Yeah, we have people who don't have the right mental models of the technology and might decide to reject the technology, refuse the technology, or isolate themselves from the technology around their world. How do you have a meaningful discussion with them starts with understanding why they might have that perception of the technology, and understanding the historical and cultural narratives around that technology in their community and their background. And obviously, for most of you, this is the most critical piece, future of work. How do we think about jobs that don't exist 5 years from now? Speculative design, thinking about, and these are skills that we don't actually teach in our classrooms always. We take for granted that they will pick this up in their job, or they're going to take a course somewhere, but all of that is probability and randomness. We can't predict. So when we think about teaching AI literacy, it's really important for you as faculty members to think about, in your course, in what you are teaching, which parts of AI literacy can you touch upon if there's no course that they can take on independently. And also thinking about policy. I was talking to some colleagues earlier. Oftentimes, we don't train people who are building these technologies to go into policy. And oftentimes, we don't train people who are going into policy about the technology. So how can we bridge that? And that's the crux of global governance discussions of today, is how can we get people with these different expertise to talk to each other? And that influences whether AI will be used for good, or are we all heading towards a direction where robot overlords are going to dictate every moment of our lives? Or if your microwave is going to take over your bank account. And again, this is a lot of text, but I invite you to engage with this work and think about, how does your work in your specific field inform what we are thinking about AI literacy, and what are the gaps? Because a lot of times, a lot of the AI education models do have a technocentric flavor to them. And it is crucial that when we think about these technologies, that we are having dialogues that have the ability to include perspectives of people from different backgrounds. And that is really crucial. And again, we've also mapped these topics to learning objectives that are very granular for you to engage with. So part of the work is also thinking about, okay, we have this concept called AI literacy. It's broken down into these learning objectives. What do I teach when? When does it start? And I believe that we can't wait for people in elementary or middle school now to receive AI literacy, and then they become adults and they are AI literate adults. And we can't wait for people who are graduating now, people who are in workforce. How do we approach AI literacy at all of these levels? So part of the work we've done is to map these pillars and learning outcomes to different groups and different levels of the K-2 lifelong learning model. Thinking about, if you are a non-CS major, what are the things that you need to know to be still meaningfully engaged with the topic? Thinking about what is an appropriate level of depth for a middle schooler versus a high schooler. Thinking about people who are right now in a job and they want to transition into this field. Or thinking about people who do not want to do any of these other things, but they want to be able to, in their community, lead discussions. What does being AI literate mean for them? And again, if we lived in a world where I could wave a magic wand, I would want everyone to learn everything. But we did do some prioritization of what are the things that we believe are the minimum required learning goals that each group will have to focus on. And the next steps involve, I mean, there's some challenges to these too, is how do we navigate teaching people who don't want to use the technology? That is going to be a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Thinking about accessibility is also a really important thing. As we know, not all AI technologies are accessible. So what does it look like to teach about a technology that is not accessible in a manner that is inclusive and prioritizes accessibility? Thinking about content in other languages. We live in a country with a very rich diversity in language and culture. So what does it mean when we have these AI technologies that are primarily driven by and built on English language models? How does that influence people who are engaging with these technologies in other languages? I've tried to use it in my own language, which is Telugu, and it wrote a letter to my grandparents, which is what I was trying to use it for, in a version of the language that requires a PhD in that language to decode. Because that is the data, the model was trained on dissertations of people in those languages. It did not have context for everyday language use. And so thinking about that, especially as we have institutions that have a certain type of students, and we're launching these AI services, how is that going to influence students who might not be native English speakers? And thinking about that, thinking about people who are going to be transitioning from K-12 into higher education. Because we don't want to teach the same supervised machine learning algorithm for them in 6 years, every year, the same topic. They're going to get bored and checked out. So what does it look like to be able to build different levels of depth and knowledge and pathways to pursue that AI literacy to fluency to competency model within our specific spheres of influence? And also, how does this look like in person versus virtual? We are living in a world where a lot of our classes are virtual. How do you build that team, and how do you build that dialogue and debate component of understanding the socio-technical components of AI literacy in a virtual environment? These are things that I want you all to talk to me about after the talk as well. And also, I mentioned earlier higher education. This is some work that I've done on understanding how higher education is becoming more AI ready. AI literacy is the one thing that students, faculty, administration, leadership, IT staff, and business staff all need to have the highest amount across all the layers of higher education AI readiness infrastructure. So as you think about where are you investing your money, AI literacy should be the first place and not the technology buying part. So I'm going to conclude my talk with some thoughts that I've been thinking about and I want you to think about is, as we look at the future workforce or the fields that are going to be adjacent to AI, where do you want to lie? Do you want to be an uninformed AI user or a naive AI user? Or do you want to be AI literate and then have the ability to become an informed AI consumer or become an AI manager? A lot of people are going to be working with AI tools to manage people. And this fundamental AI literacy approach of having these 4 pillars also ensures that our future society decisions, that 4.5 million people, are not just AI engineers or creators, but they're responsible. Thinking about when you are going to be talking about AI literacy to others, how can you leverage these 4 pillars in your discussions and dialogues? But also thinking about how can we fundamentally move the dialogue away from just the technology focused to human focused? And thinking about what is the interdisciplinary component in this? And I talk about interdisciplinarity Because again, this is every AI course that is being offered in a master's or a bachelor's degree in AI in the United States. The area which has the least amount of courses is the intersection of Pillar 3 and Pillar 4. And these are the courses you are teaching now, or you are the best equipped to teach. So what is missing in that interdisciplinary focus, and how can we expand this bubble around AI to not just be technology-centered? And so I don't want to end without sharing some resources of people who are doing this amazing work. There are a lot of organizations that are focusing on building infrastructure, curriculum, building professional development modules for all stakeholders at different age groups and different private-public sector priorities and agendas. And this is a report that we just published a few weeks ago. It is a NSF-supported grant with the Computing Research Association on understanding how we can expand and develop capacity in AI. And we brought in around 200 experts in the technology, and we asked their thoughts on what they think is missing to make sure that we develop technologies that are going to be inclusive. And I want to say, if you scan the QR code, you will be able to access more of the resources. You should be a part of this dialogue. And thank you. And again, I also want to acknowledge my mentor, advisor, and partner in crime, Dr. Meyer, who has engaged in many of these discussions and dialogues with me across time zones and across countries. And happy to talk more and answer your questions.
So now we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, please just raise your hand and we'll come by with the mic.
Thank you for your very good presentation. So I would like to ask you the question of the future. So it's all tied up to the question of the EMAT, positive image of the future, and it's always very ambiguous. So do you think that, so now closer to the developers, you understand that it's something that turmoil which is happening now all over the world adds this one, which is AI. How can we prepare people in the world of, well, volatile, unpredictable, which is VUCA world? And the other thing, literacy. Today it is this literacy, then in a couple of months or maybe years, there'll be different other, and we're still preparing for this one in the conservative world, like still is the system of education in universities. Hope you understand what I mean.
So I'm going to deconstruct the question into two parts. Is literacy relevant when we have so many waves of literacy? And what is literacy's role in this world we live in with all these other priorities? Where does the priority lie? Yeah. So this work, again, the term AI is the word of the year, right? Or the last 2 years. But a lot of this work actually builds on the foundations of internet literacy, cybersecurity literacy, digital literacy, and a lot of the critical thinking parts of the curriculum actually falls on that gen ed writing, rhetoric, history, and these fundamental literacy skills that we hope higher education is delivering to our students. So I think what AI literacy does is it connects the dots across these different kinds of knowledges we expect, and honestly that industry expects from our students, without having them to take 30 more credits. By integrating these AI literacy elements across these 4 pillars within the curriculum that already exists, we can make sure that we are empowering our students to leave our institutions to be able to engage with the world in a meaningful way and an empowered way. And thinking about the world we live in and what is the role of AI literacy, if you are not aware of how the technology works, how will you advocate for yourself? Agency. And this is a work that, so I'm also affiliated with the Center for Humane AI Studies at UNC Charlotte, which is a group of faculty across the humanities, liberal arts, who are doing work on AI. And the thing we are talking about is that as we think about AI literacy, the biggest danger is that we fall into this self-fulfilling prophecy that AI literacy has to lead to AI competency. That is not a requirement. You can be AI literate without having to get an AI job. And what that means is that by becoming AI literate, once you go into the world and you see something happening, you can talk about it and take actions. And this is something that came up to me specifically. I will wrap up in 10 seconds, is I did not know how dating apps were using AI chatbots to keep users engaged with the app, and they're not actually talking to humans. And there's no rules and regulations in our country that prohibit someone from using an AI chatbot to keep the user engaged because they're generating revenue through the ads in the app. Whoa, so many levels and so many layers. But to unpack that, I need to be AI literate to understand what that model, even to recognize. Thank you. I hope I answered parts of the question. It's a beginning of a dialogue.
Thank you very much for a very informative talk. So I had a question about the nature of the capital-intensive AI development that we're seeing. Almost every day we see stories of mega acquisitions. Yesterday there was one between AMD and OpenAI, $100 billion. The other day it was NVIDIA and OpenAI. How do you think this extremely capital-intensive AI development process, where it seems like maybe a handful, maybe a dozen people are driving the entire process, how does this potentially skew the development of the tools that you talked about so eloquently here? Are there any red flags that we should be aware of? I mean, since you talk about citizenship, inclusivity, doesn't this raise like some serious concerns about, I mean, you mentioned the issue of language and how, the fact that this is being done in English, potentially constrains the use of these tools in other societies and languages. But I think the issues are much larger. The fact that, this is happening in a fundamentally undemocratic way, without much, public feedback, inclusion, except, as an afterthought maybe. How does this, what sort of like framework or institutions should there be? I mean, the fact that, I think yesterday, I was reading that how in California, they outlawed the use of machine learning generated algorithms to set pricing for electricity. And the footnote was that this is the reason why AI industry is fighting tooth and nail to prevent regulatory frameworks from emerging, because they don't want California-like action to preempt the use of these tools for pricing. And a lot of these tools are being used in a very opaque, non-transparent way. So I see this is not really like a happy meeting ground of democracy and AI, and this, especially considering the scale and scope of this technology. So could you, I mean, what are your thoughts on this issue? Do you think that we are right to be concerned about this, or is this?
Yes. I was going to say, that is its own talk. Part of my work on like AI ecosystems talks about that, is understanding who are the drivers and stakeholders. I'm bringing back to the topic in a way is to think about, irrespective of where you are in the world and who is driving the democratic versus non-democratic processes of governance, the first thing that comes under attack is education and literacy. So the thing we can do is to make sure that everyone is AI literate so that they can navigate the challenges that come from the world we live in. The ability to identify an AI-generated news article versus the ability to understand citations and sourcing for an article, that benefits our students more now than it did 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, I promise you, we were not talking about citations and source mapping for every knowledge information. The ability to identify information and process that information is going to be the biggest skill. And the governance part I'm not going to talk about more, but it is really important to understand that we are in a world where we are seeing a rise in authoritarian regimes across the world, but also, me being the optimist I am, I think technology can empower citizens to hold their governments more accountable. I think technology can be that unlocking key that allows more transparency and accountability in processes that were previously hidden. And we saw that with COVID, like all of the Zoom virtual, it just improved the access. Like many students who might not have pursued a degree are able to pursue a degree today because of technology. And I think technology can, if all of you go into the field and start building these tools, make the world a better place. I am going to be optimistic about this because hope is something that's really important for us all. I am, the mic is, the people carrying the mic have the power in this room.
We need some. Hi. Okay, so I'll try to ask a question that's student focused then. I loved your talk. That was fabulous. And one of the things that really struck a chord with me is the resistance to practicing with or using AI, and there's many different reasons why people might do that. One that I hear from students pretty frequently, though, has to do with climate change and the environmental impact of artificial intelligence and the computing that it takes to make that happen. And I'm just curious, I imagine you've talked about this in your areas, if you could talk to us a little bit about that dimension.
So one of the, I'm going to start with this concept called seamlessness. And we're going to get to your question. This idea that technology needs to be seamless or ubiquitous or ease and convenient in our life gives the user the privilege to not think about where the technology is coming from, developed, and the resources required for that technology. And that is a very intentional way of technology development. And that priority has been influenced by historically who has driven technology development and who is represented in the technology. And the solution to even have this dialogue is to change the paradigm and be more critical about the cost of convenience versus the cost of the technology itself. So I'm going to make it a personal reflection. I left social media a year and a half ago. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of it. Partially because I read the terms and agreements of all of these apps, and Snapchat said, "Hey buddy, I am your friend." And I was like, no. But I did lose a lot of convenience in my ability to connect with my friends, the ability to, I met a friend who had a whole baby in 6 months, and I was like, whoa, I did not know. But for me, I had the privilege of being AI literate and knowing that that technology development has all these privacy security issues. And another part that people don't want a lot of us to know is the intensity of resources required to collect data, clean data, store data. And we are seeing, I think in America specifically in the last 2 months, more data center contracts have been rejected by municipalities within where people in that area were able to, in a very statistical, well-thought-out manner, talk about the energy consumption of getting a data center, the job opportunities that would be developed, talking about the load on the grid, and talking about the water consumption and water system in that city. And I think we have to have these dialogues in a way where people are aware of those contexts and even understanding, this is funny, how many of you have used, I'm not going to say the company's name, a shopping store where you walk in and you walk out and it automatically bills you what you took from the shelves? Okay, some of you know what I'm talking about. there was a point in time where they claimed it was AI, but it was actually humans who were watching the videos and labeling things, and you got the bill, but it was sold as AI. So transparency in that process. And talking about ChatGPT, redlining and red teaming, it was mostly workers in India and Africa who did a lot of the cleaning of the data for the AI models to be user-friendly. So how much were they paid? So all of these discussions are discussions we need to have, and this 4-pillar framework allows that. Because before, there were only pillar 1 and pillar 2. So it's important, and I think to start to have that dialogue, you need to have all these components.
Hello. Hi. Thank you very much for your talk. I'm struggling with what I take to be a profoundly noble goal and a potentially desperate situation that this doesn't seem to put at the center. And that is, right there you have this chalkboard that says knowledge is power. But what I don't hear is the knowledge about the power. And so I'm personally totally compelled by the grandparent narrative of trying to get my grandmother to maybe use something that could help her or my family or friends and get them a little more empowered because of the various struggles that society and the economy and so on present. And then if I can give them more power, they'll be better off. But what I'm not addressing in that situation is nuclear weapons. I'm not addressing climate change. And by that I mean catastrophic systematic transformation. And it doesn't strike me like this talk addresses literacy in terms of the literacy about power and radical transformations that are coming within 2, 4, 8, 10 years. It's not just about being good pedagogues, where I'm able to write a curriculum that adapts with the news and so on, but understanding that AI is not going to be in any way democratically accessible. And the point by the surveillance capitalist firms and by governments is to precisely develop power that they will not give other people. So if I'm trying to have literacy about AI, I better not be mystified about what that AI is. It's not just a chatbot that I'm going to have access to. There's going to be so many other kinds of power that we will not have access to. And I don't hear that as a part of this literacy. I think this is a noble vision about giving more people tools. But it doesn't seem to address the fact that the tools being designed here are not for us.
Great point. Thank you. And I think you answered your question partly as well, based on, so if we think about the construct, vocabulary building, I talked about AI literacy, fluency, competency. So this is AI literacy. Think about this as the competency part, where you are learning more about the technology itself. This is you're learning about how the technology influences our life, and this is beginning or building the vocabulary to have the discussions you're having. What I believe is we will have to extend this graph further, and this is the part we will be talking about. It has to build on literacy. We will be talking about what are the power dynamics and structures that exist within our society that drive the technology development. And we're also going to be going into the more philosophical realm of who is benefiting in society from the structures that we have, like higher education, like government, like private sector. And we're also going to have to think about AI beyond human-centeredness. I know, we're not even near human-centered AI. But I think we have to start thinking now about, we have AI as a technology. With all of this work, we are trying to build more human-centered AI. But that is still an egoistical, narcissistic approach that humans are the center of the world. We're going to have to move to planetary boundaries and how AI ecosystems are interacting with the nature ecosystems. And we're also going to have to take that sociological, anthropological lens to understand what are the drivers of the value of a human life, and that discussion and dialogue will have to be connected back to not just AI, but technologies in general. That is where I think we have, that will allow us to answer your question, I think. But before we do all of this, we have to start somewhere. And for me, I've realized is so many people are scared of the technology or are overwhelmed by the news or are overwhelmed by the messaging that we don't even move past that perception layer to understand the technology and how it works. All of these are questions that are dissertations, by the way. So I empower you to go study these things. And hopefully, these pillars and frameworks will allow you to be more equipped to answer those questions.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm an undergrad student and I had 2 questions to ask. So number 1, what's the current rate of progress of introducing AI literacy courses in undergrad and graduate level institutions? And the second question is, how will AI revolutionize academic research in the future? Because I'm sure when you started your PhD, ChatGPT either didn't exist or was in its infancy, but now whenever you train all your research material on AI, it can literally generate a 100 to 200 page draft on its own, which can save a huge amount of time. It's also very helpful for data analysis, which would have taken at least months if you do it manually. So what's your opinion on both of these questions?
Opinion, thank you for saying opinion, because it's not going to be very well informed because things are changing so quickly. But something that benefited me a lot is I did use AI tools to inform myself and learn myself, is the models are not really that great with math. Some models not great with math, some are great with math. First is thinking about who has access to those models that are great at math. They're oftentimes behind paywalls, or you have to have a subscription. How many people can afford a $24 subscription to a specific AI technology tool? That's a big question. A lot of grad students don't even have money to afford rent and other things. The second part is the AI this is why understanding the technology is really important. If you understand how this model works, there are probability-based models that predict the most likely thing. The key word here is most likely. Most likely means the median of the data points or the standardized point of the data points. And new knowledge is not necessarily always the median or the standard. You don't get a PhD for the median or the standard. You're pushing the boundaries of what exists. Another perspective also of people think is that the median or the standard can also be seen as a simulation of creativity and ideas and thoughts. And we do not want to live in a world where everybody sounds the same, where everybody thinks the same, where new ideas are all sounding the same. So with research, the research life cycle has so many components, right? It often takes 1 year to go from an idea to publishing a paper. There's pros and cons to that. But each step we have to think about, is this the step where I can outsource my thinking, or is this the step where I need to be the driver from the research perspective? And from the more technology generally, I think it's really important to think about this. Qualitative researchers are really more careful about data. We just don't think it's a transcript. We read the transcript 10 times and reflect on what are the patterns in those transcripts. And AI will not be able to do the kind of reflexivity that a human can do. And that is where a lot of the research we are seeing, I mean, AAAI had 20,000 papers submitted, which is exponentially higher than previous years. I'm sure many of them are AI-generated papers. They're all not going to get accepted. The ones which have that intentionality are the ones that are going to be published. So human mind, I think, is still the driving force of development, I think. For now. I can't promise.
Hi. I just wanted to ask your opinion on what AI, like, what you think the cultural change, how, sorry, how you think culture is impacted by AI, like traditional culture, how do you think it's changed over the past few decades, I'd say, since AI really started becoming big?
That is a question for your faculty who are experts in anthropology and philosophy and sociology, because I haven't spent that much time engaging with the literature in terms of culture. That is something I'm interested in studying from the identity perspective. What I have observed in my research is that when the identity of the user is significantly different from the identity of the creator, the user's adoption models and trust in the technology are oftentimes less trustworthy than they would be if they feel like the technology was developed by someone sharing that identity. And this does not mean that every group has to develop technology for their groups. That is not the case. What it means is we have to develop technology in a way that no one is left behind. And I think there is an idea that if you can, and this is where universal design versus customizability come in. If we can design technologies to be accessible and inclusive of the person who right now has the most barriers, the person who already has access to the technology will also have a better experience of using that technology. Coming to culture piece, I also find that very fascinating in the sense, I mean, I was talking to a faculty here, Charlene, I think, Minji, about religion and technology, and how many of you have asked AI what it thinks about you? Raise your hand. Oh, this was a trend on social media a few months ago, was people were asking AI what AI thinks about them based on all of their prompts. And some people were asking AI, do you think God exists? And all of these other questions. The AI model is again going to give you the median answer. And that, I think, is generalization of culture, which we do not want to move towards. I will pause there because I don't have a more informed answer. But I think technology can empower cultures, but also over-reliance can be an inhibitor of celebrating culture. So it's a tool. It depends on how the user uses it.
Okay, I know that we have a lot of hands up. I just want to preface that we will be taking 3 more questions. If you are interested in engaging with Dr. Tadimalla today, he is going to have like a small little meet and greet in Dixon Hall 438 from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. So if you're able to stop by, please do. If you want to engage further, if you want to read or view the live stream or recording again, we will be sending that out. So just an FYI, if we can't get to you today, we apologize in advance. We just have time for 3 more, and then you can attend the meet and greet later. So I know that there's another person here with the mic. If you wanted to start your question.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Tadimalla, for your time and this amazing presentation. I'm an undergrad student studying political science, so I have a huge passion for advocacy, and talking to my peers, I hear this huge division about how does AI affect our world in the sense of the industry with changing the environment and how it's very water consumption. And I read this article saying that 30% of these plants take water to cool down the systems. Now, I'm a fan of AI, and I think it can be used as a great tool. However, as a person that understands my other peers and the policy behind it, do you know anything about the policies that they're working on, taking the water intake for the people that live in these towns to make sure that they have running water, clean water, not having radiation, and making sure that their lives are just as important as ours using the technology? So when I use these prompts, I want to be very mindful that I'm not destroying the earth and I'm not destroying someone else's home because we all want to have a beautiful planet. How is there any policies that you're aware about with the condition of the water and the plants that they're continuing to build in the future with AI? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the passion. I reflected back. I am you in most rooms, by the way. I also want to say you all have a very collective knowledge in your faculty. So also engage in these discussions in your classrooms. Like my goal today was to empower you to ask these questions in your classrooms and with your faculty, and hopefully you will all become AI literate and have more meaningful discussions. Coming back to policies, I think it's also really important to understand that the term AI can be deconstructed in many ways. It has become a catch-all term, but even 10 years ago, there was research being done on how much electricity a search costs, like Google search. When you search something, what is the amount of electricity, or how many searches will light a bulb for a minute? I think I read a research paper on that a couple of years ago. So these discussions were already happening. But what we need to be thinking about is technology provides us with all these benefits, right? How can we be more sustainable? What that means doesn't necessarily, sometimes it means not trying to use an AI tool for everything, which is true. You don't want to prompt it to ask every single thing, being more mindful. But it also means thinking about how can we talk about renewables? How can we talk about other, like quantum, nuclear, other sources of improving efficiency of existing power generation sources? Thinking about how can we improve the efficiency of our electric grids that we have now, and investing in infrastructure. And there's using copper wire versus optic cable versus nanotechnology, wireless transmission of power will all have different forms of energy consumption for the same task. So how can we move towards these more sustainable, less consumption-oriented power or resources will be the key. Because I don't think as humanity we let go of tools. We find ways to use those tools more efficiently. So what that means is more of you have to do research and pursue careers in those directions, not just the technology development, but the whole ecosystem around it. And it's going to take a lot of hard work because we are seeing, I mean, how many of you have heard of the Climate Conference of Parties, COPs? Okay, so negotiations between coal industries and energy consumption has been something we have seen for the last 20 years. Progress is can be measured in inches, but with AI, we are seeing a resurgence in the willingness for member states to commit to things that they might not have committed to previous technologies because they need so much collaboration. But they're also thinking about how do I protect my own citizens. So it's a very complicated era of life to be in. And the only thing we can do is talk about things, but also take those discussions, reflect on them, and advocate with others. Like we have to take these conversations to our local elected officials, local higher education boards. So, I mean, that's going into something that your institution has a lot of strength in already. I know I'm giving semi-answers, but that is the state of the world we are in.
Hi, thank you for the very interesting talk. I have so many questions, but I'm going to try to be very general. I truly just want to understand what the actual benefit of AI is. I don't think people need more AI literacy. I just think people need more literacy. You know, we have an illiteracy problem. Now we have more students coming into high school after K through 12, and they're illiterate. And from what I understand, with the replacing of like the notebook with the laptop over time, like these things affect children and affect their ability to become literate and to develop critical thinking skills, and we're removing more tactile experiences from K through 12 education and implementing more and more use of the computer and use of just standardization on the computer. So I just wanted to mention that, but what truly is the benefit of using AI? I will be honest, I'm in the camp of people who is a little against AI because I do think that it is it's a danger to critical autonomous thought, and even AI, artificial intelligence, is it intelligent? We have to ask what it means to be intelligent. We have to ask what it means to be rational. So why are we trying to base our life decisions off of an artificial intelligence? The commercial that you showed with the people making pasta, I saw last night on cable television, and I was like, oh my gosh. Just read a book or call up your aunt and ask her about the recipe that you should make to impress someone. Um, how can advocating to philosophy students to use AI benefit them? You're supposed to read the book. It's supposed to be challenging and take hours. If it's difficult, go to the library with your peers and talk about it. Watch videos about it. Ask your professor, right? I just feel like we continue to move toward this mindset of society that we need to have maximum output with minimum input. So I really want to grasp, in your opinion, what truly is the benefit of using artificial intelligence?
I appreciate it. This is the conversation I have at my dinner table with a lot of my colleagues and mentors and my students. I'm going to talk about, there is a lot of hype also. It's important to recognize there's a lot of hype. But also it is important to recognize that hype also has power in this world we live in, and to recognize that narratives have the ability to change things. So we have to acknowledge that piece first. Actually, before ChatGPT's release, people thought the next big technological innovation would be in the virtual augmented reality space. We thought that would be the direction we would go in. But this technology happened, and the adoption of the technology by people at different use cases tells me that there is a use. If there is no use, people would not be using it at the scale we are seeing it being used. But I also want to balance that with the idea that technology is not the solution always, but we are using technology to fill in the gaps where we have failed as humans in society to do different tasks. I'm going to talk about two specific examples. One is teachers in K-12, and we're going to talk about healthcare. We live in a society where some children don't have the attention of their teacher because their teacher is doing 10 different things. There's one for 60, under-resourced, and there's no capacity to pay attention to the student or child. In that case, while AI might not be better than human, it provides like a first aid buffer that allows that student to have someone to help them think through a problem or receive vocal or accessibility support to achieve a task which they might not have been able to do before. So I think AI is helping there. Or again, when I use the word AI, AI has so many different technologies. It's natural language, video, image, audio generation. So the technology is actually helping us in different scenarios. And talking about health, there used to be a time where I would go to a doctor, you are charged $120 per the hour, 15 to 20 minutes of that hour, the doctor is spending going through your documentation, typing things. And AI can help the doctor do that prep work faster by having kind of a summary, which costs maybe a nurse 30 minutes to do. So there are things where the technology is improving the efficiencies within the system. So there are pros, but I don't want to fall into the false sense trap that AI is going to do all of those things without a human, which is where you get into the dangerous territory. AI technologies can help improve our efficiencies in all of those things, but a human will be leading or having the decision-making capacity in those things. So I think AI technologies or data technologies, whatever the name may be, digital technologies are improving the world. They are providing accessibility. They're providing people access to things. I mean, we know of the things that are happening across the world so quickly. That is a big benefit of technology. We're able to be global citizens in a way we could not have without technology. So I think fundamentally technology has the ability to make human civilization prosper. But the people who are controlling it, is that their goal? I do not know. And that is what we need to think about also, along with this.
Hi, everyone. I know I see a lot of hands. I'm so sorry. The questions took a little bit longer than we expected. So we are out of time. But can we just give a hand for Dr. Tadimalla one more time, please?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before you leave, a quick announcement. So we continue our series next month, Wednesday, November 5th. Check out the QR codes outside. We will have Dr. Tina Elias-Arad, who will talk about the truth of the matter in the age of Gen AI. And so she will talk about more the relationship that we as humans have to Gen AI software and how that impacts our daily lives. Thank you so much. Have a great day.